every tunnel, go underneath that Al-Shifa hospital, destroy that command and control structure, wipe out every fighter. That could take forever. It took 8 months to a year to wipe out ISIS from Mosul and Raqqa.
That is exactly what it means, yes.
So 8 months to a year, is that the time frame you're giving for this? That continuous pounding will continue for 8 months to a year?
I'm not going to speculate on a time frame. You proposed that time frame. We haven't set deadlines, we've set targets. That target is the total defeat of Hamas, its total destruction, and that fight will continue as long as it takes, because we will not go back to 6 a.m. on October 7th. We will not go back to a world in which Hamas can decide whenever it wants to invade Israeli villages on the border, burn whole families alive in their homes, torture children in front of their parents, parents in front of their children, abduct babies into the Gaza Strip. That will never happen again. And we will do whatever it takes. And it will take however long it takes.
Of the 300,000 people who've taken to the streets, whether in the United Kingdom or protests that are happening elsewhere, or even in countries like the United States of America, where people are removing posters of those children who've been abducted, is global opinion changing? Do they see Israel as the perpetrator and not Hamas? I mean, many are calling Hamas as freedom fighters.
We are horrified and nauseated by the pro-jihad protests around the world. You know, this conflict has really given the world a moment of moral clarity. Are you for humanity or are you for barbarism? Are you for civilization or are you for savagery? And the people who are taking to the streets, calling on Israel to abandon its hostages in the Gaza Strip, calling on Israel to leave Hamas in power so it can perpetrate another October 7th massacre, are taking the side of the terror organization that on October 7th beheaded babies, burned babies, abducted babies, and I have no words for our contempt for the people who are serving as apologists for the pedophile rapists of Hamas and the atrocities they committed on October 7th. Our message to anyone taking part in protests around the world, taking the side of Hamas, is you should be ashamed with yourself.
But there are people like, Rashida Tlaib in the United States who say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, is not a genocidal call to wipe out Jews and Israelis.
Of course it is, because between the river and the sea is the state of Israel. People who are calling from the river to the sea are calling for the demolition, the destruction, the erasure of the state of Israel. They're saying that this amazing, wonderful, democratic country that we have built here shouldn't exist. And who's going to run it? Hamas? That is your vision of liberation? The people who on October 7th perpetrated that horrific massacre? We're fighting for our survival. We're fighting for the survival of our wonderful democratic state. And the people who are chanting from the river to the sea are calling for the destruction of a UN member state. And they too should hang their heads in shame.
I also want to ask you, how does Israel view Suella Braverman being removed as Home Secretary of the United Kingdom, especially at a time when she said that these were hate marchers and the Metropolitan Police were behaving in a partisan manner?
We have no comment on domestic politics in other countries.
But does that point towards victory of radical elements, as some see it?
I'm not going to give you a comment on the UK cabinet reshuffle. That is a domestic political matter for the UK, which is, of course, an extremely close ally and friend of Israel that has made its support for our right to defend ourselves and to defeat Hamas a very top priority.
Fair enough. And how do you see this battle pan out from this point? Now that you're in Gaza City, we saw General Hagari, going inside that Rantisi hospital and bringing out details. Al-Shifa next?
Well, we are moving through the Gaza Strip and we are exposing evidence of Hamas's war crimes. Our troops have discovered tunnel shafts underneath children's beds. They found rocket launchers next to children's swimming pools and amusement parks. They found cables for rocket launchers that lead into mosques and into clinics. We are exposing how the Gaza Strip has been systematically subjugated and oppressed by Hamas for the last 16 years. Which instead of building a positive future for the Palestinian people, has used it to wage war and jihad and terrorism against the people of Israel. Now, of course, the situation around the hospitals that sit on top of Hamas's headquarters is very dangerous and very sensitive. It is outrageous, and the world should be outraged that Hamas has built its terrorist headquarters in the basement underneath the hospital. You know, Hamas's whole strategy is based on human shields. Hamas's whole strategy is based on putting civilians on top of its terrorists because they know that that will stop Israel from attacking the terrorists underground. It's sick. It's disgusting. And we're doing everything we can to peel away Hamas's layers of human shields. We found people that Hamas is holding hostage, Palestinians. They're keeping them as human shields in hospitals. And we're killing those terrorists so that we can evacuate the innocent Palestinian civilians to safety so that Hamas cannot use them as human shields. And we expect the whole world, by the way, to join the European Union in a very clear condemnation of Hamas's strategy of using hospitals as human shields. It's sick, it's disgusting, it goes against international law, and it must end immediately.
And are you disappointed 40 days into this conflict, you haven't been able to retrieve your hostages so far, 239 of them? Is that the reason that your operations are stalled, as some would argue?
Israeli society is, of course, sick with worry for the fate of the hostages. These are innocent people who were ripped out of their beds, and now they're being held inside a tunnel by terrorists with ski masks and Kalashnikov rifles. You know, there's a baby in there who was 9 months old when this war started. He's now 10 months old. There are children in there who are orphaned, because Hamas murdered their parents in front of them, ripped them out of their arms, and are now holding 3-year-old children, even younger, inside a tunnel in the Gaza Strip. You know, every time I go on air and I talk about the hostage crisis, I don't think I'm able to convey just how awful, just how terrible this reality is that Hamas is holding babies, for goodness sake, hostages inside the Gaza Strip. And I don't think that there's a single viewer right now who, if babies in India had been abducted by LET or by ISIS and were being held hostage, wouldn't expect their government to go to the ends of the earth and to do everything possible to bring them home. And so we're ramping up military pressure on Hamas. We're turning up the heat on Hamas and telling it, you had better give us back our hostages now, immediately and unconditionally, and we will make you pay.
Elion Levy, for joining me here on India Today. Many thanks. So very clearly, the Israeli government really wants to go after these Hamas terrorists and get their children, their hostages, back home and safe. Elion Levy, many thanks.
Thank you.